Good morning and thanks for joining us. Holly Shields here live from Kalkine Studio and you're watching The Early Trades, a show where we share with you a glimpse of the Australian share market opening trade scene along with the global and domestic drivers triggering the market momentum. First up, Aussie shares were trading higher at the open with advances from the materials sector offsetting weakness from the gold miners and healthcare stocks. The index opened high today, but then flattened as IT is lagging while energy and financials outperformed. The S&P 500 ASX 200 index was up 0.3%, and on Friday, Aussie stocks finished stronger, but for a second week in a row as travel and aviation stocks lifted on news of New South Wales axing home quarantine requirements for the fully vaccinated. Now for a look at some stock performances from the opening trade, well, Oz Minerals advanced 3.6% while Virgin Money UK has risen 3% and IGO firmed up 2.7%. Beach Energy climbed 2.4% as Lynas Rare Earths has added 2.3% similarly, and Tyro Payments has firmed up an identical 2.3%. Meanwhile, Silver Lake Resources has dipped a worrying 3.3%. St Barbara has fallen as well 3.2% to $1.50 per share, and Evolution Mining has dipped 2.8% to $3.79. Now for a look at some important newsmakers, Zipco experienced a record transaction revenue and volumes in the first quarter of the new financial year and also announced the successful completion of its global rebrand. The Buy Now Pay Later group reported quarterly revenue of $136.8 million, up 89% on the same period in 2020. Its first quarter transaction volumes climbed 101% to $1.9 billion, while transaction numbers rose 177%. Customer numbers grew as well 82% year-on-year to 8 million, and the number of merchants using Zip's platform increased by 71%. Meanwhile, Senex Energy has entered into discussions with POSCO International after receiving an $814 million takeover bid. The offer, worth $4.40 a share, has received on the 2nd of September, following the submission of two prior non-binding proposals in July and August. Following the receipt of the bid in September, Senex granted POSCO a period of exclusivity in order to complete due diligence. It extended that exclusivity period to the 5th of November, as POSCO has indicated that if a transaction proceeds, it's likely to be implemented by way of off-market takeover offer, which would be subject to a 50.1% minimum acceptance condition and Foreign Investment Review Board approval. Senex said it believed it was the best interest of shareholders to engage with the Korean steel giant. With that said, it's time now for a short break, but stay tuned because I'll be right back with more prominent newsmakers.
Tune in to get the latest information.
Whether it's about market movements or the currency graph,
Sectoral coverage or industry news.
we cover it all on our news segments.
Be on top of the latest news
With Kalkine TV. Welcome back. Holly Shields here reporting for Kalkine TV. IBE Group has acquired Active Display Group and AFI Branding Solutions for a combined $6.5 million. $5.2 million of that will be paid upon completion, while a further $1.3 will be paid based on the achievement of agreed revenue targets over a 24-month period. IBE Chief Executive Matt Atkin said these acquisitions strengthen the company's offerings as the leader in the design and production of temporary, semi-permanent and permanent retail display solutions to leading Australian and global brands. Moving on, Ramelius Resources is set to acquire Apollo Consolidated after making a $138 million takeover offer for the Gold Explorer. The offer has an implied value of 56 cents a share at a 27% premium to Apollo's 3-day VWAP. The company's directors have unanimously recommended the offer and have entered into a binding agreement for the shares they own or control, representing 13.7% of Apollo's issued shares. And Hub24 is set to acquire Class after entering into a scheme implementation deed with the company. As part of the transaction, Class will receive 1 ordinary Hub24 share for every 11 ordinary Class shares plus 10 cents a share. The implied total consideration represents 52.8% premium to the 1-month VWAP for both companies on October 15th. The Class Board of Directors has unanimously recommended that shareholders vote in favour of the scheme, and the scheme is expected to be implemented in mid to late February. Well, moving on now to the news coming in from New Zealand. The country's consumer price index beat expectations in the third quarter, soaring to its highest level in more than a decade, giving a boost to the New Zealand dollar and supporting the case for further interest rate hikes as a global energy crisis pushes inflation to uncomfortable levels. The NZ dollar has powered up to 1/4 cent of 71 US cents, but there's still a long way from this year's peak of 74.46 US cents. CPI rose 2.2% in the quarter ending September 30, from 1.3 in the second quarter, according to data released by Statistics New Zealand. Annual inflation accelerated to 4.9% from 3.3 in the previous period due to a rising price in fuel, housing and food. Economists have forecast CPI to rise 1.4% for the quarter, or 4.1% annually. And good news from the travel space now. Quarantine-free travel from New Zealand's South Island will resume from next week. The federal government revealed that the surprise announcement comes months after the travel bubble was temporarily paused in response to growing COVID-19 cases in Australia. On Sunday, Chief Medical Officer Paul Kelly said the federal government has reopened travel from New Zealand's South Island in response to no new locally acquired cases since last year. But travel from the North Island will remain off limits until the end of the month. Well, that's a wrap on the early trades, but stay tuned to Kalkine TV because we have many more shows lined up for you today, sharing live updates across economies, markets and sectors. Holly Shields signing off.